Have you ever dreamed, what if?
Our kids were 1 and 2 respectively, and I felt here I am working these crazy hours, flat out, spending no time with the family at all. Is this what life's all about?
What if you took your life back?
There's more to life than just going to work every single day.
What if you bought that boat and just sailed away?
You know, I think we all have dreams, and it's just a matter of when we're going to try and make these dreams become a reality.
5 years in the making. 35,000 miles. Come live one family's amazing journey of discovery. This is Ocean Wanderer. A 52-foot cutter sloop gracefully carves its way through the blue Caribbean. Today, her crew of 4, Tony, Michael, Ariën, and Saskia Knight, begin their 5-year odyssey to sail around the world. But before the Knights set out on this extraordinary journey, they had many questions. Could they really do this? Would their 2 children be safe with a life at sea? Was this really going to be the change they had dreamed about? It will take 35,000 miles in 5 years for this family to discover the answers. This is Ocean Wanderer. What kind of people decide to sell it all, buy a boat, and sail away? What drives these people to do, and not just dream?
I was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa. My parents were a very solid nucleus in the family and really promoted us doing things together as a family. My dad was determined to create a stable family, and he was a great believer in us doing these things together. I learned from my dad how to set goals, and also he really instilled in me the belief that whatever I want to do, I can do.
Tony's wife Ariën also grew up with a family life full of adventure. Born in Singapore to Dutch parents, she lived in Malaysia, Holland, and by 14 settled in South Africa.
Particularly my mom made out as if this was the most normal thing in life. Moving and traveling and doing a lot of different things was just the way life was.
So it seems the world stage was set early for both Ariën and Tony. But even still, here was a family with 2 young children, a beautiful home, successful business. Why sell it all and just sail away?
I had just bought out my dad's dental practice, and I felt here I am working these crazy hours, flat out, spending no time with the family at all. And I thought, is this what life's all about? Okay, just back together.
Ariën also feels the weight of Tony's absence.
You know, we'd made this very conscious decision to adopt 2 kids, and Tony just wasn't around. There's more to life than just going to work every single day.
Ariën is also haunted by a life in her past, one that always put dreams off to another day, a day that never came.
My mum died. She was 53 years old. All her life, with her 5 kids, everything that she did was for us. She'd been saying, my time will come, and she never got to that stage where she could get around and enjoy herself. So that changed my perspective, particularly on when you're going to do things, because you just never know what's around the corner.
Something had to change. But how do you get your life back? To help find the answer, Tony looks to his past.
My parents bought a sailboat and sailed across the South Atlantic to South America. And we did that as a family.
This was the life Tony desperately wanted back, a life he wanted to share. The adventures, the exotic new places, experiencing life to the fullest, and most importantly, sharing it all with family. Tony and Ariën decide to make that change and make their dream a reality.
And we just decided that, yeah, this is it. The time is ripe. We're not seeing enough of the kids. Life's getting too frantic at work, and Ariën's mum dying prematurely. That, yeah, let's get out there and make the most of life right now.
There and then, Tony and Ariën Knight decide to embark on the journey of a lifetime. What had worked in his past would be his family's future.
Well, we'd done a lot of sailing in the Gulf Islands for 10 years. And then the kids came along and we sailed with them down there from literally 6 months. And this sailing bug got into us, and we kept saying each time we went down to the Gulf Islands, you know, we need to do some more of this. And then Ariën planted the seed in my mind that, well, what about Australia? And I said, yeah, I've always wanted to go to Australia, but what do we do once we get there? And we started to think, yeah, well, if we're going to go to Australia, well, maybe we'll continue on.
I just dreamt about doing something like that.
So we thought this is a time to make a change in our life, and what better way than to forget about it all, take off, and circumnavigate the world for 5 years.
With the decision made, preparations begin. But where do you start?
Actually, the first thing we planned was how long we wanted to go for. Because once we knew how long we were going to be away for, we could work back. How much money did we need? What courses did we want to take? What needed to be sold? What needed to be kept? Getting the boat. So it was just a whole process of steps.
With the countdown on, preparing for their around-the-world voyage gets underway.
If something were to happen, we just couldn't dial 911, so we really had to be self-sufficient.
Over the next 18 months, Tony and Ariën dedicate themselves full-time to learning everything they will need to literally survive. One of the toughest steps would be to find a suitable boat that they could call home for the next 5 years.
We were looking for a boat that would be a decent size to give us a good speed across the oceans, a boat that would be comfortable, because we didn't want to camp for 5 years. We had 2 kids, we were going to be doing school, we wanted to have fun, we wanted to feel safe. We wanted to have a boat that would offer some luxuries.
After 2 years of searching the coasts of North America and the Caribbean, their dream boat is located.
So we flew out to the US Virgins, terribly excited. And there was Valhalla, which was Ocean Wanderer's original name. We still had a year and a half to go, and we organized to have somebody look after the boat in Florida for us.
Now 170,000 US poorer, the Knights have one more thing to do to give them the financial means to make this dream come true. It's also the last emotional link to their old life to be severed before their adventure can truly begin.
This is the last week that we'll be staying at 3808. Quite a thought.
June 11th, 1991. The day that seemed as though it would never arrive comes at last.
Okay, we're going to go in the car now.
We, on that day, felt lousy. When we were packing the car and all the family was standing there, why are we doing this?
As the Knights pack up what's left of their earthly belongings, they see their lives distilled into one small car and a beat-up U-Haul. That emotional wave hits hard for Tony as well. He must say goodbye to the man that, in many ways, planted the seed of this adventure, his father.
I remember him shaking my hand and saying, "Son, I know you can do it." I guess he was my idol that I always looked up to, and I was kind of doing it for him as well, and I knew that I had to do the job and finish it. And he put his arm around me and said, "Well, son, you're on your way," and it was just such a neat feeling.
The first leg of their adventure is a 10-day road trip to Florida to finally take custody of their new family member and floating home for the next 5 years.
We had a car that was literally being pushed by the U-Haul. It had all our possessions, our worldly possessions in it. And I'll never forget standing there in front of the Florida state sign. And we knew that one was sleeping, we'd be seeing Ocean Wanderer, so it was really, really exciting.
June 18th, they arrive at the marina in Florida and get their first glimpse of their new home. Only to find out that the perfect dream boat is a total disaster.
The person that had been looking after her had really done a very poor job. She was out of the water, and we thought that would be a safe place to be. We had some leaks on the deck, and Ocean Wanderer had filled up with rainwater.
The years of planning, dreaming, and scheming, $175,000 for the boat, selling the family home, uprooting the kids, and now this. Does the dream die here?
I mean, it was awful. It was disgusting. There were cockroaches, there were just pine needles and branches on the deck, bird droppings. It was filthy.
Tony and Ariën are heartbroken. This was supposed to be the big payoff. This was supposed to be the time of their lives. But their dream had turned into a nightmare. It seemed hopeless.
It was totally overwhelming. It was awful. I mean, it was horrible. The job list got longer and longer. We spent more and more money, and we kept finding more and more things that had to be replaced. A huge majority of the stuff that suddenly became apparent wasn't even on the list.
Tony contemplates defeat. Maybe he should cut his losses, pack up the family, and go home. There's one problem. They don't have a home to go back to. With zero options, Tony and Ariën decide to stick with their plan. Somehow, they must make this work. The kids do their best to help out, but there's only so much a 3- and 5-year-old can do.
Our plan really didn't work out in that we would have the kids there, so we ended up finding a daycare for them.
I felt so guilty.
Tony and Ariën are now spending less time with their children than they did before they left on this mad adventure.
There was just so much work, and the only way I could justify it was thinking, well, for the next 5 years I'm going to have them 24 hours of the day, so maybe for the next 3 months I can spend some time, doing the boat.
The family is fractured. The dream is totally unraveled. It will take 6 back-breaking months of work and nearly $100,000 of unbudgeted expenses to try and bring Ocean Wanderer back to shape.
You got it, that's it.
Finally, through the blood, sweat, and tears, a sailboat starts to appear. Perhaps their dream is still alive.
Really, Ocean Wanderer is now ready. She's ready to be put back in the water, and I remember it as if it was just yesterday. Having this big crane lower her down into the water.
They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Maybe somehow, through this calamity of events, they have become stronger as a family. And very soon, the life they've envisioned will finally begin.
Well, there we have Ocean Wanderer back in the water and with the name on. So she's looking better.
The stage is set. The Knights and their Ocean Wanderer are finally ready to take on the world.
Finally, the day has arrived. We're really on our way now.
And it was the next morning early at about 6 a.m. that we left and went under the bridge.
Okay, one long one and one short one. And a short one.
Officially, Michael, setting off on our trip. Where are we going? Around the? We're going around the world. We're starting today.
And a lot of things crossed my mind as we headed out into the marina. Were we doing the right thing? 5 years, 35,000 miles, 2 little kids, big oceans, rough seas. Would something happen to Ocean Wanderer? And were we being foolhardy? But at the same time, the excitement of knowing that the day had arrived and here we are, we're going to take on the world.
There was almost a sense of relief, because those 6 months in Florida were pretty tense. I really was ready for that freedom of now we can be the family and do the things we wanted to do. It was that kind of stuff that I dreamed about, and that was the part that I just was living for.
The first port of call of their adventure, ironically, would be the first landfall that Columbus made back in 1492. Ocean Wanderer charts a course to the islands of the Bahamas.
I'm excited about the fact that we're finally on our way. And there's the apprehension, of course, of what lies ahead. I mean, what are the Bahamas going to be like? Are we going to make a safe landfall? Is it going to live up to all our expectations? So I'm really pumped, excited, ready to go.
The crystal blue-green waters of the Caribbean and favorable winds gently carry Ocean Wanderer south into the tropics and to their first port of call, the islands of the Bahamas. Being alone on the vastness of the open ocean gives time for Tony to reflect on all they've decided to take on.
A lot of things crossed our minds. 35,000 miles, 2 little kids, big oceans, rough seas. Would pirates get us? Because the Bahamas is renowned for piracy. Would something happen to Ocean Wanderer? But at the same time, the excitement of knowing that the day had arrived and here we are, we're going to take on the world.
The Caribbean Sea gently rocks Ocean Wanderer and lulls her crew into a comfortable rhythm as they settle into their new 52-foot world. NASA is to be the first foreign port of call for the Knights and their newly refurbished Ocean Wanderer. But there's trouble just over the horizon. As they approach NASA, Bahamian customs officials demand that Tony bring Ocean Wanderer into dangerously shallow waters to be checked.
And then that sickening feeling happened. We hit and we realized we were up on this little sand lake and there was no ways we could get off it.
I guess I didn't navigate too well. So we've got our scout in the water, Ariën checking to see how we're doing.
And that feeling does not go down well with me. It's like being caught with your pants down almost. It's horrible.
Running aground at their first port of call, although embarrassing to the captain, proves not to be fatal to Ocean Wanderer. Now safely moored, the family can finally relax for the first time since this extraordinary adventure began.
The Bahamas were idyllic for us. It felt as if we'd left mainland or continental USA and we were now really on our way.
Find a beach, and we will find a beach,
It was our first sort of tropical paradise, so to speak. And we had a good couple of weeks there just unwinding and getting a real feel of what we had dreamt about.
This is what their dream was all about. Time. Time to relax. Time to share. Time for family. The 2 weeks that the Knights spend in the Bahamas is more like fantasy than real life. Sand, sun, surf, and sailing. It's everything they asked for. Having spent 2 weeks cruising the islands of the Bahamas, Ocean Wanderer casually plots a course southwest towards Port Antonio.
We have the autopilot on, which is fantastic. This is the first time we've really used it.
And this is the first time I ever watched the clouds.
That's right, love. And we have a beautiful, calm, hot, sunny day, as you can see.
It's a 3-day voyage to Jamaica. It gives Tony and Ariën time to find a rhythm and routine for family life on board. The typical day starts early for Tony, standing his watch at 4 a.m., and then at sunrise, he's joined by Saskia.
The mornings were a very special time. We'd sort of cuddle in the cockpit, keeping each other warm, and talk about things, talk about the day, and just talk about the country that we'd visited or the place we were coming to.
Ariën and Michael are up around 8 and join Tony and Saskia for breakfast. And then, even on a boat, there's no avoiding school.
We thought it was important to start right away. So we did a lot of crafts, a lot of drawing, a lot of music. We used to do a lot of collecting and making necklaces and things like that.
Saskia loves the diversion of school, but Michael is less enthusiastic. He dreams only of hooking himself a monster marlin. With the kids occupied with their schoolwork, Tony gets on the radio to chat with other yachties, checking incoming weather and sea conditions. School goes painfully slow for Michael. But finally, school is finished, and the fishing can begin.
Do you remember that first fish?
I sure do. School stopped immediately, and we all went to the stern of Ocean Wanderer to tackle this fish.
We're not sure what it is. Big excitement. Well spotted, Mick. Michael saw that, didn't he? There it is. Look at it.
Can we eat it?
Mum, you'll have to get your book out.
We
it becomes abundantly clear that Michael's newest passion and obsession is fishing. A safe enough hobby if you're standing on the shoreline. But how do you keep two kids wandering the slippery deck of a heaving, rolling boat in the middle of the Caribbean safe?
We were particularly concerned about losing a kid overboard. So we decided that we would have some rules. One of them was during the day, if it was calm, they would be allowed to go up on deck, but they had to have a safety harness on. What we did was to have a jack line, which is a cable that ran from the bow to the stern, down both the port and the starboard side of Ocean Wanderer. And that would give them the freedom to move up either the port or starboard side of Ocean Wanderer. So they're always attached to the boat, but at the same time free to move around. The most important thing is to stay attached to the boat, because generally if somebody does fall overboard, it's almost impossible to get them back.
Little does Tony know that very soon he'll have to put the impossible to the test.
Here we are, we're a month out and we nearly lost a kid.
It's now been nearly 2 months of living their dream life. Enjoying just exploring and basking in all the delights of the Caribbean.
And I'll never forget the day we arrived in Port Antonio. We had to find this little entrance into this beautiful natural harbor, and there it was. We had made it, and we anchored, actually we tied up at the local yacht club, and were greeted with open arms by the local Jamaicans.
This was the first time we really realized how much fun it was having the kids on board.
Our kids allowed us to do a lot more.
They were so free and easy with their meeting of people. They were so natural that it made it easy for us, and it made us very much more accepted right away. We realized that the kids were an integral part of everybody's lives, and two little ones which were very open and keen and excited about life tended to obviously bring people in, and we made friends very easily with local people because of the kids.
As beautiful as Jamaica is, the Pacific and the rest of the world beckon. Ocean Wanderer pushes westward. The tropical sun is warm and the Caribbean is peaceful. Enough so that Tony and Ariën agree to what seems like a harmless request from Michael for a swim on a tow line. Ocean Wanderer's speed is miscalculated. Within seconds, Michael is in trouble.
What happened is he started submarining because he couldn't keep his head up anymore.
And he let go.
The waves weren't big, but there's always a swell. We had Saskia on the stern, and she said, I can see him, I can't see him, I can see him.
Fortunately, we managed to get back to him.
And as we fished up this little body, his one comment to us, Mum, that was exciting.
It was absolutely nerve-wracking. I've thought about that day many days, many times since then, and we came so close to losing him.
With Michael back safely on board, Ocean Wanderer's very relieved captain turns her west through the Caribbean Sea towards the gateway to the Pacific.
Monday morning, the 3rd of February, we are
heading to Panama.
well off just to back up.
This wasn't going to be more island hopping. This will be a 600-mile run. It will also be the crew's first test on the big water.
We started off with nice gentle breeze, and the wind eventually picked up out of the northeast, and the speed of Ocean Wanderer picked up, and we were creaming along.
This leg would also be one of the first times that the crew would suffer an ocean sailor's worst scourge.
It's a terrible feeling, and if you've ever been seasick, I mean, there's nothing worse. You say, get me off this boat, I want to get onto land, get me out of here.
It will be 4 long days before Ocean Wanderer finally slips into calmer waters. It takes sanctuary in the San Blas Islands.
We arrived in the San Blas Islands and were anchored next to one of the smaller islands. And the local Kuna Indians were very inquisitive to find out what was going on. And 2 little boys arrived in a dugout canoe. And in Spanish, they asked Michael if he would like to join them.
And Michael was in there like a shot. And it was so neat to see these kids who couldn't communicate with each other, yet were able to have a good time.
Ariën has a wonderful way with people and kids, and they tend to gravitate towards her. And she doesn't have to do much before we had a shipload of kids on board.
And I think this definitely endeared the kids, because the next day we were invited ashore, particularly Sassy and I, to go and have a look how they made their local handiwork, the molars. And after that they asked if they could dress Saskia up in the traditional clothes. She loved it. For the next week we could only call her Mola. No longer was her name Saskia. Michael also enjoyed taking his bike ashore. He thought that would be a neat thing to see if these kids would like to ride his bike.
And this was something new that this white man had brought to their island. And it was just fascinating to see the complete extremes from the dugout canoe to a bicycle.
Weaving through the San Blas Islands, Ocean Wanderer sets a course to the gateway to the Pacific, the Panama Canal.
And I remember wondering what lay ahead, what would happen to us in the next year as we crossed the Pacific.
After a 600-mile seasick-ridden voyage, Ocean Wanderer reaches the San Blas Islands off the coast of Panama. The islands provide more than relief from rough seas. It's also here that Ocean Wanderer picks up 2 very special new crewmates.
Mum and Dad arrived in San Blas Islands, and the excitement's huge, especially amongst the kids. Wow. As our trip progressed, we realized that they really missed their grandparents.
Tony's father has had a lifelong fascination with the 400-year-old story of this shortcut from the Atlantic to the Pacific.
It was one of Dad's dreams. He wanted to go through the Panama Canal. So he'd always said when we were going sailing that I will be there and I will be one of your line handlers.
There's no way that Tony was going to let his dad miss going through the 8th wonder of the world.
How are you doing, Dad?
The 2-day 50-mile trek will cost Tony a toll of $250 US. Not bad, considering the highest toll paid by a ship was over $140,000. If you don't have a boat, you can always swim the canal for only 36 cents. These historic locks will lift Ocean Wanderer some 85 feet above the Caribbean Sea before gently releasing her into the Pacific. As they face the last lock, Tony's mother and father depart, and the last of the lifelines are cast off. Ocean Wanderer and her crew are now alone. Now stands the last barrier between them and the vast expanse of the unpredictable Pacific Ocean.
I'm pretty apprehensive at this stage. And I remember wondering and thinking when those gates opened, what lay ahead.
The Pacific Ocean reaches out to the horizon. Ocean Wanderer is turned southward towards her next destination.
Everybody hears about the Galapagos Islands. Most people have no idea where they are, and they have that magical feeling, and Darwin and all that stuff comes flooding back.
The journey to the Pacific has been an exciting one, to say the least. Now there's time to reflect and relax as Ocean Wanderer gently makes her way towards South America, Ecuador, and the Enchanted Islands. After a successful passage through the historic Panama Canal, Ocean Wanderer has finally arrived at the Pacific Ocean. She's welcomed with a fresh wind and gentle rolling seas.
We'd spent so much time getting the boat ready. I felt very confident in what we could do. I felt confident in Tony's ability. So all in all, it was just sort of excitement more than trepidation.
So where are we going?
Galapagos.
Well, it's March the 17th now. It's Tuesday morning, and today is the day that we've crossed the equator.
The kids had never crossed it, neither had Tony.
Terry and I decided that she would be King Neptune's mermaid.
The kids knew nothing about this, so I spent some time trying to dress myself up as a mermaid, and I hid behind the stern of Ocean Wanderer.
Quick, come look, I think the mermaid's here.
Michael's house has never been across the equator before.
It was a lot of fun, because the kids had to walk the line.
There she goes, across the equator.
It was a lot of fun. We tried to do things like that to make the crossing more exciting for the kids.
It's a simple and frivolous diversion, but one the entire crew will cherish even to this day. It will be another 7 days before they reach the Galapagos, 650 miles off the coast of Ecuador. These famous islands and even the surrounding waters have been a protected heritage site since 1959. This is not a destination you just stop by and drop in.
We had tried to get a permit to visit the Galapagos Islands and had been turned down on 3 different occasions. So we weren't sure what would happen when we got to the other end.
And once again, the children will be the key to soften the hearts of officialdom.
The fact that we had kids made such a big difference, because the customs officer took one look at us and said, 3 days isn't enough when you have children. You must be here for at least a week. As a result, we're able to see a lot more than we had planned to see in the Galapagos. The kids particularly loved the Galapagos. They were able to learn a bit more about the sea lions. So we realized how much you can teach a child by just reading to them and telling them and then actually experiencing it.
After 4 incredible days of exploring the wonders of the islands, Ocean Wanderer must continue on her way, this time towards French Polynesia by way of the Marquesas. This will be the longest leg that Ocean Wanderer has attempted so far. It will take an estimated 19 days on the open Pacific before they reach their next port of call. Preparing for a month at sea takes some thought. You can't just stop off and pick up a few things you may have forgotten. And then you have to find a place to put it all. With provisions stored, they settle in for the long voyage. But the Pacific's disposition has changed, and the seas begin to toss and roll Ocean Wanderer like a loose cork. And once again, Tony and Ariën succumb to seasickness.
Seasickness has always happened to me for the first 2 or 3 days. I didn't ever start a crossing without being seasick. Saskia never had any seasickness, so I was probably the one who would spend a lot of time lying down.
Eventually, the Pacific is pacified. But the crew will soon realize that you never let your guard down and never underestimate the power of the Pacific. Ocean Wanderer has made her way from the Isthmus of Panama to the Galapagos and survived her long 19-day voyage to the Marquesas. These tropical islands provide a perfect place to relax and recharge after a long voyage, or so they thought.
We were in this bay in the Marquesas, and it was a very deep anchorage, so there was a big swell coming into the bay, and it was miserably uncomfortable. And it was this continual back and forth motion of the waves that put an undue stress on Ocean Wanderer. And we heard this almighty crack. My first reaction was we'd hit something, we'd probably hit the ground. Then I thought, well, maybe a log had come in and we'd hit the log. So I happened to just go to the helm and turn the wheel. I don't know what made me do that, and it was totally limp.
With no way to steer the boat, Ocean Wanderer and her crew weren't going anywhere.
It actually snapped the chain that goes around the sprocket for the pedestal steering.
Ocean Wanderer is now crippled and helpless.
And my heart just sank. I thought, wow, what are we going to do now? We don't have this rudder that we can control. We're at an absolute loss. We've set about trying to get this fixed, and it turned out to be a hell of a big deal.
It's only a $100 part, but getting it delivered to the middle of the South Pacific is going to be a challenge. Tony radios his father back in Canada to help expedite the process. Now, all they can do is wait for the part to arrive, and the island turns out to be a less than perfect spot for the 2 weeks they're stranded.
Well, there wasn't much to see on the island there because the kids couldn't swim a lot because there were a lot of sharks. The water was very murky, so you couldn't see what was below you. And the very rolly anchorages, so it was not a very comfortable anchorage at all.
But eventually it arrived, and we were able to install the chain. It went very well, and then we could be on our way again.
The actual rudder repair takes less than a day, and they waste no time picking up the anchor and heading to the calmer waters off the island of Morea. But even in this idyllic setting, there's trouble, literally, in the very air.
anchored in a beautiful, idyllic bay, little village just nearby. And with all the refuse that's been burnt and the smoke and the smell and everything, Mike developed a reaction to this and a very severe asthmatic attack.
Although Ocean Wanderer is equipped with inhalers and Ventolin for just such an emergency, this time his attack turns out to be more severe, and they realize they need help.
It was so bad, in fact, that we had to go ashore in the dinghy, and Ariën and I and Michael managed to hitch a ride to a local hospital.
It's pretty scary when your little boy is suddenly suffering and all you see is this little guy who can hardly breathe, and you know that if you don't get the right medication into him that it's not going to get any better.
We really were dependent on medical supplies and help to keep him alive, really. And it was an ongoing thing, making sure that he was okay.
For Tony and Ariën, Michael's attack is a frightening reminder that with life on board a sailboat, you can't take anything for granted. With Michael's safe return, the calm waters of the Society Islands provide relaxation for the kids and time for Tony and Ariën to catch up on constant household chores. But the break is short-lived when Tony gets an odd plea for help.
It's about mid-morning. Ariën's doing school with the kids, and we receive this radio call from our friends on the northern Cook Island of Suvarov.
Another yachty has radioed that there's a medical emergency with 3 of the 9 inhabitants of the tiny island of Suvarov. And Tony's skill as a dentist is exactly what these remote islanders need.
There are 3 people on the island who have a severe toothache. A supply ship comes to Suvarov once every 6 months. They'd have to wait about 6 months before they could get any help. So Ariën and I and the kids had a chat, and we decided we would cut our time short in Bora Bora.
We just said yes, well, especially for Tony. I mean, he couldn't not go and help some people out.
And that day we picked up the anchor and headed off.
The sailing dentist is on his way. 690 miles away, his patients wait. As Ocean Wanderer approaches the island, the kids make a plea of their own.
The kids were hot and bothered, and they asked if they could have a swim overboard. So we threw a line over, and both kids jumped over and grabbed this line.
Suddenly, squeals of delight turn to screams of agony.
The kids started to scream.
Oh, yes.
And we were totally clueless as to why they were screaming. We stopped Ocean Wanderer and pulled them on quickly. We noticed these tremendous welts all over Saskia's body in particular. Unfortunately, we must have passed through a bunch of jellyfish. I thought, well, the best thing to do is to dry her with the towel. And so I rubbed her frantically with this towel, hoping that I could get the jellyfish off. We'd done the completely wrong thing.
Although the stings are exceptionally painful, Saskia suffers only minor injuries and recovers quickly. As if that weren't enough, they discover quite by accident that there's more than jellyfish in these waters.
Suvarov is totally infested with sharks.
And something like having Michael and Saskia or anybody swim overboard like that was almost like having shark bait. So we had to be quite careful.
Despite these hazards, Ocean Wanderer arrives safely on the shores of Suvarov, much to the relief of the island's inhabitants. Now, Dr. Knight has some teeth to fix.
And there were these islanders on the beach waving to us. I felt like a missionary arriving in this, godforsaken little place. And literally that day we got to work and did some dentistry on 3 of the islanders. And Saskia was actually my dental assistant, holding the flashlight while I did whatever dentistry I needed to do. And it was, I'd have to say, my longest house call that I've ever made. It was wonderful to be able to give something to the islanders, and wow, did they ever give back in return. They just treated us with so much love and care and made us feel so much part of their family. And we just had a very unique bonding experience with this group of people.
With his mission accomplished, it's time to say goodbye to his new patients, pack up and make their way to the Kingdom of Tonga.
And it's another 2-day passage, so a short trip, about 300 miles, heading south, and we're arriving in this beautiful piece of paradise.
Tonga was terrific. There were lots of islands, lots of protected anchorages, calm sailing, great for swimming, great beaches.
We spent a month in Tonga and became quite friendly with the local people. And Michael and Saskia were then invited to the school play. They involved the kids, dressed the kids up, showed them how to do some of the basic moves, and as a result, Michael and Saskia really participated.
I just couldn't get over their hospitality. They would invite us into the home and they'd have this huge spread of food laid out on the table, and we were made to feel part of the family. And just their wide open faces and their enthusiastic bright eyes, and just a lovely group of people.
After a month on the island kingdom, it's time again to push on. Now the end of November, it's a critical time of year for sailing in the South Pacific. Ocean Wanderer must make safe harbor in New Zealand before the Pacific's infamous cyclone season begins.
Very excited because I know that we're going to be getting to New Zealand, and that will be the end of the first chapter, the first year.
Ocean Wanderer's arrival in New Zealand will mark over 10,000 miles at sea for the family. They've survived all the mighty Pacific has thrown at them. It also marks the beginning of a new chapter of their 5-year adventure. It's now been 259 days since the Knights started on their amazing adventure. Ocean Wanderer has left the tropical paradise of Tonga and continues to make her way towards New Zealand before the Pacific's notorious cyclone season begins. Her fellow yachties have been radioing back to brag about the great speed they've made completing the passage to New Zealand. Not to be outdone, Tony decides to put Ocean Wanderer to the test.
And I thought, what the hell, let's push Ocean Wanderer, let's keep it going and see how fast we can go. And we had all the sails up during the night as well as during the day. We could really let it rip.
This is the first time that Tony has pushed Ocean Wanderer this hard. and she responds with remarkable speed and makes the passage in unofficial record time.
Oh, good to be here. After what, 6 days, and we're going to make it in 6 days and 5 hours. What land is it, love? New Zealand.
I had tears in my eyes. I was so pumped, knowing that, wow, we'd crossed the Pacific. I brought the kids safely across with Ariën. Ocean Wanderer was still in one piece, and we had made it. We knew that we had now 5 to 6 months to just relax and take it easy in New Zealand.
They've been sailing now for almost a year. Tony, Ariën, and the kids are looking forward to being landlubbers for a few months. And to take time to explore the land of the Kiwis.
We were looking forward to staying put. We were looking forward to putting the kids in school.
Which is going to take the pressure off Ariën and I with the schooling, because that was a huge stress factor.
Tony wasn't a teacher.
My tolerance level for trying to teach Mike and Sus was really, really poor.
Ariën has put a lot of pressure on herself to have the kids ready for this moment as they go off to their first real school. But it's obvious that the kids see school quite differently.
I'm going to school. My lunchbox is packed, my book is packed.
So what's the most important thing that you're looking forward to doing?
Swimming, homework.
I felt very much as if I was on trial when the kids went to school. You know, if they'd done well, I felt good, but if there was some issue that they weren't coping with, I took that very personally.
Almost immediately, there's trouble with school again.
Mike hated the school.
He hated having to conform.
So we had lots of battles there.
Saskia, who was so gung-ho that she should have been ahead of where she was. So I think she also was quite disruptive as a result of that.
That really hurt me when I realized that they weren't always that capable of dealing with kids their own age. They would say things or do things which I would cringe about.
And the kids definitely were better at socializing with adults. And that scared us a little because we felt they were maybe growing up too quickly.
Particularly Sus. Sus didn't enjoy kids her own age. She would come home and tell us how boring they were and be so very critical of them, which concerned me a lot.
To add to this family stress, Tony has again pulled Ocean Wanderer onto dry dock, and his current job list count stands at 124.
I am totally obsessed with keeping Ocean Wanderer in great shape.
And I wanted to get the relationships sorted out.
And there's friction developing between Ariën and I.
The year at sea has been tougher than she and Tony have realized. And although it has been a great adventure, it's taken its toll on them emotionally.
I felt I wasn't getting the support from Tony.
I feel that if we don't go to sea with everything shipshape and 100%, I'm putting the family at risk.
So I felt even more that it had been all left on my shoulders.
And I think I went totally overboard.
Now more than the dream is in trouble. Their very family hangs by a thread.
It was really touch and go as to whether we would stick together.
All kinds of doubts started to creep in.
And and I didn't communicate very well.
I just couldn't believe it.
There's really no point in sailing around the world with a wife and 2 kids. He might as well have done it on his own if he was going to be that involved in just constantly working on the boat. Tony felt he wasn't getting the support from me when it came to boat stuff, and I felt he wasn't supporting me when it came to trying to sort out kid issues.
Ariën's just very, very frustrated with her husband and skipper, who's just not pulling his part of the deal.
We were just really of no support to each other.
It was really touch and go as to whether we would stick together.
To add to this turmoil, Tony loses his balance while working on the boat.
And I fell backwards 4 meters down onto the concrete, landing on my back. And I'll never forget it, my head just hit the concrete so hard, and I was literally stunned.
Ocean Wanderer now doesn't have a skipper.
It became apparent that he couldn't sail the boat.
I knew that my wrist couldn't even pull up my own weight.
It became apparent that he couldn't sail the boat.
And even if they wanted to try and continue, there's new pressure. Finances are getting tight.
We just got totally snowed under, trying to do everything, and I started saying, well, what is this all about? I mean, this is ridiculous.
We got out the numbers, crunched some numbers, times, dates, trying to decide whether we should maybe head back to Canada.
After much discussion, Tony and Ariën come to some hard conclusions.
All of us were on top of each other, and we needed a break.
The alternative was just shocking.
We needed to sit down and talk and give it some thought. The work mounted up and it cost so much money.
I am totally obsessed with keeping Ocean Wanderer in great shape.
You put all those factors in and you sort of don't always rationalize things very well.
The story is a familiar one for the Knights. Obsession with work, no time for kids and family. Tony and Ariën have come full circle, addressing issues that were the catalyst for this mad adventure in the first place. On July 7th, day 569 of the adventure, the agonizing decision is made. Once again, the Knights pack up their worldly belongings, say goodbye to Ocean Wanderer, New Zealand, and possibly the dream. This wasn't the way the adventure was supposed to end. Retreating back to Canada to put their lives back together, the Knights have spent 8 long months healing broken bones and troubled relationships. Tony's wrist is healed, enough so that he's able to get some work and top off their finances. Now, their thoughts turn back to Ocean Wanderer and their dream.
We'd always related so well before that.
Ariën was going to change her ways a bit, although she really didn't need to do the changing. It was really myself that had to do it. And to definitely make more time for the kids, and for Ariën especially.
We just realized who and what was important, and that was too precious to let go. Tony breaking his arm was actually probably the best thing that happened.
Now, they are all more committed to the dream than ever before.
The kids said, "Mum and Dad, I can't wait to get back home." And that was back home to Ocean Wanderer in New Zealand.
On April 5th, they arrived back in New Zealand and home to Ocean Wanderer.
And I'll never forget the day we arrived back in New Zealand, really pumped up, ready to get back to Ocean Wanderer and continue with our travels.
Ready once again to take on the world, Ocean Wanderer departs New Zealand. It'll be a 7-day sail almost due north before they reach their next landfall, the island of New Caledonia.
Once again, that apprehension hits me, and it doesn't take us long before we're out into the really big rollers. The mood on board is not great. As we headed north, the weather got better and better. We've shed our sweaters and we're really right back at it. And this is the life.
There's our dear sweet boy doing the job. Tony boy. Yeah.
Everything just fell into its groove very quickly.
The mood is great. The kids are excited. Fishing line goes out again.
But things have changed. Tony and Ariën have deliberately modified the way they deal with the chores of day-to-day life, each other, and especially their ongoing battle with Michael and school.
He wanted to get rid of everything, especially when it had anything to do with school.
What the kids would do was climb up to the top of the mast and with the pages out of their textbook, tear them up and literally scatter them over the ocean as the Ocean Wanderer sailed along.
They just made a big ceremony of throwing their work overboard.
School is around us. I mean, the world became our classroom, so to speak, and the kids were learning things all the time in the environment that we were exposing them to, the different places, the different people we visited, and the different activities that they got involved in.
They've also made the decision to take more time to explore together as a family and spend time experiencing the adventures each new port of call offers.
We rearranged some of the finances so that we did have some more money freed up.
We realized that this is a lifetime experience that the four of us are doing. I can't see us buying another 52-foot boat with 2 young kids and doing this again. It's impossible. So we decided that let's make the most of where we're at. And there the four of us were standing at the rim of this volcano. And every now and again, one of these 7 vents would blow lava, and this would be shot skyward with an incredible explosion.
Yeah, here it comes. Watch this, Dad.
With a new zest for adventure, the Knights look to experience all the Coral Sea and the South Pacific have to offer.
But that was just a classic example of just getting out of the box, realizing that life's for living, let's go do something that would be wild and exciting.
June 15th, day 889. They arrive in the land down under.
I was particularly excited about Australia because this is kind of what started this whole thing for us.
Here again, the family will take over 2 months to really explore and learn what Australia has to offer.
The crocodiles were a highlight, particularly for the kids. They'd read and heard so much about the saltwater crocodiles in the Barrier Reef and in the northern part of Australia.
It was very exciting, but we were always wondering if a salty might puncture our inflatable dinghy.
From Darwin on Australia's northern coast, it'll be an easy 3-day sail to Kupang in Indonesia and on to the Java Sea.
Going to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, all those places represented my childhood. So the thought of going back to where I had come from was very exciting for me.
It's been a tough year for the crew of Ocean Wanderer. But their dream seems stronger than any of the adversity they've suffered. The excitement and anticipation of starting a new chapter of their around-the-world adventures outweighs any of their fears. Leaving the land down under, a course is laid in to Indonesia and the Java Sea.
I was so excited. To me, going to Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, Sri Lanka, all those places represented my childhood.
They will take nearly a month zigzagging their way through the Lesser Sunda Islands before the jewel of Indonesia finally comes into view.
We arrive in Bali and we go and visit the old part of Bali.
Always open to immerse themselves in the local culture, the Knights embrace the exotic world of Bali.
The kids and Ariën and I had a wonderful time buying stuff in the various stores. You don't just go up and pay the price that they ask for. You get into a bantering back and forth, and the kids really got into this and had a blast.
We were always on the lookout for something to show the kids.
And your juice?
I want another one.
I bet you do.
One of the things that became available to us was the ability to go to a funeral.
The widow invited the two kids to join the funeral procession. The Hindu believe that there's a reincarnation after death, so they actually celebrate death.
And so when you look at it like that, and the kids as well, there was no fear. It was absolutely fascinating. I mean, it was such a joyous occasion for everybody. We talked about it to the kids, and they didn't seem at all affected by it.
They just took it in their stride, just like they did everything else.
This was the way it was going to be for these people, and they felt fine with that.
It really did make us look at life differently.
You know, we spent 6 weeks in Indonesia, loving every little bit of it, but I was really excited about going on because our next stop was going to be Singapore.
Singapore is more than another exotic location for Ariën. It's also home.
I was born in Singapore and had spent 12 years of my life in Singapore and Malaysia.
So we're taking Ariën back home, and we're also going to be meeting Ariën's dad. He's flying out from Holland, and we're going to do Singapore together as a family and visit some of the old haunts. It was quite an emotional time for Ariën and her dad. She has all these wonderful childhood memories in the Far East.
It was for me very exciting to be able to take the kids and Tony around to the house that we lived in, the school that I went to, so it was kind of fun.
It's a dream come true, reminiscing with her dad, reliving her youth, and sharing her roots with Tony and her children. But Ariën's father must return to Holland, and it's time too for Ocean Wanderer to push north to Thailand. To get there, they'll have to make the passage through the treacherous Malacca Straits. This is a favorite spot for pirates looking for solitary boats to plunder.
This was one of the parts of the world where piracy was prevalent.
You're on a little sailboat, and anybody in a little outboard can outmaneuver us.
People were killed. It was frightening, very frightening. A person who was killed was a couple who were boarded, and the wife was down below. She heard the commotion, she grabbed the gun, she came up with the gun, they shot her. They said afterwards to the husband, we wouldn't have killed her had she not had a gun.
Tony hears that there's a race that will take them from Penang to the island of Langkawi, through the risky Malacca Straits.
And we thought, wow, what a better way to do it than in a group with a flotilla of boats.
Well, it's the 21st of November today. It's race day!
Always ready for a challenge, Ocean Wanderer's speed is once again put to the test.
That's our finish line. We've crossed the line. There you go.
We did terribly. It was just a wonderful experience, but we did very, very poorly in the race.
The race provides an exciting and safe passage to the island of Langkawi. Ocean Wanderer has safely made it through the Malacca Straits and arrived at the Malaysian island of Langkawi.
The Ocean Wanderer is at anchor in this beautiful bay in Langkawi with maybe 20 other boats, 30. And I was invited to go on a round-the-buoy race with one of our sister ships. Ariën stayed on board with the kids on Ocean Wanderer, and whilst we were out in the race, we noticed this storm developing. We could see the lightning in the distance. Huge cracks of lightning, and the sound of the thunder was just horrifying.
The kids, you could feel, were a little bit restless this time because the rain was pelting down, there's lightning and thunder all over the place. So I got the kids calmed down by watching a video and started unplugging all the instruments. And all of a sudden we heard this terrific bang. I looked at the kids and they looked at me and I said, I think we've been struck by lightning.
Her main mast takes a direct hit. Luckily, no one is injured.
And we actually saw Ocean Wanderer being struck.
It was just terrifying to see that the Ocean Wanderer actually received a direct hit by lightning.
The kids were fine, and that was my main concern. And I started trying to replug the radar, and it didn't work. And I looked at other things, and I could see things just weren't working.
Although the crew is safe, the electronics on board are not so lucky. Nearly every piece of electrical equipment is fried. But that's not the end of their troubles.
Mike decided that it was a good place to have another asthmatic attack. There was a hospital nearby, so we would go to the hospital and have him treated there rather than trying to do it on board.
And I've never seen a hospital that scared me so much. There was literally blood on the counters, and the place definitely was not sterile. This was horrifying.
Despite the primitive conditions, the hospital is able to stabilize Michael, and Tony wastes no time in getting him back to Ocean Wanderer. But now what?
So we then had to try and pick up the pieces, and we limped back to Penang, about 60 miles south of where we were.
We needed to have the boat hauled out. We needed to have her assessed for any kind of hull damage.
As repairs begin on the boat, heartache hits again.
Saskia, in between all this, got sick.
She developed a very high fever.
And she ended up in hospital with pneumonia.
And then the final straw was I had my wallet stolen whilst getting some money to pay for some of this equipment that was coming in.
So we had no credit card to pay for everything.
And this was a time that I think we probably hit our lowest of lows. And Ariën and I said, I don't know if we're doing the right thing here. Maybe we should quit trying to do this and just take our kids back to a safe environment. So we were really at the bottom of the bucket, so to speak. We were as low could be. And Ariën and I said, I don't know if we're doing the right thing here. Maybe we should quit trying to do this and just take our kids back to a safe environment.
Tony and Ariën do some serious soul searching, and both agree that together they can overcome this latest setback.
We managed to pull ourselves together,
kids recovered, got out of hospital, and I had a month, an intense month of putting Ocean Wanderer together again.
Sourcing the equipment is turning out to be a logistical nightmare.
And I couldn't just go down to the local store and pick up the equipment. It all had to be flown in from either the US, Australia, Canada, or the UK.
To help coordinate all this, Tony turns again to his mentor and biggest fan, his father.
We got a new credit card, new wallet, and the parts started to arrive in from various parts of the world by courier. We had to literally pull the boat apart, had to rewire a lot of the stuff. It just went on and on.
We managed it. We just got on with it, and instead of obsessing about that they were going to get behind on their school, we just told the kids that this was holiday, you go and enjoy yourselves, and Tony and I would just get the boat ready.
We've had a tough month in Penang, grunge work, head in the bilges, getting people to come on board and weld things and fix things. Christmas was like that, it was awful.
Together, they successfully bring Ocean Wanderer back to seaworthiness. The adventure will not come to an end in Malaysia. On January 16th, Ocean Wanderer departs Penang. She has taken on new crew. Tony's aunts and nephews from Johannesburg have joined them for the passage to Sri Lanka.
Heading across the Bay of Bengal, we've got 3 additional crew members. I have an aunt who's pretty scared. We realize that she's nervous, that she's not letting it on. But her 2 kids, on the other hand, that are just as wild as they come. They're up the mast. They're wanting to catch as many fish as possible. They're swimming overboard. They both take on teaching the kids. And it was just wonderful. Ariën dropped her teaching altogether. And then, of course, they loved having their older cousins there to mess around and do things.
Land ahoy! Sri Lanka.
With a recorded history of over 2,500 years, Sri Lanka is a journey into the past that the family is eager to discover.
We hire a minivan to take us with a driver and interpreter, and we head up into the mountains to the tea plantations. And we stay in a lovely little hill club and play some golf, do some touring, and it's just dynamite. We visit an elephant orphanage. We go into the various temples and interact with the local people once again. The kids are really getting into this. What really fascinated me is that we were told that this was not a safe place to go to, that we should not go there. They went out of their way to be friendly. People invited us into their homes, complete strangers. And that's how we were treated. As we traveled around, we saw this little barber shop on the side of the road. And Ariën said, "Oh, Tony, why don't you have a haircut?" This guy very kindly cut my hair and trimmed my beard, and I think he charged us about 20 cents. Well, we ended up paying a lot more than that because we just wanted to help. And we maintained contact with him afterwards. I wrote letters, we sent Christmas cards, and actually ended up sending some scissors later on.
Tony, how much did that come to in US?
50 rupiah, which is $1.
So these wonderful, unique friendships and relationships were developed as we went through Sri Lanka.
The Knights are loving every minute of their Sri Lankan experience. It immerses them in an exotic world of colorful pageantry and mysterious and extraordinary ritual.
We had a holiday, something so totally different from what we ever did on the boat. It was kind of fun.
Rested from their 10-day Sri Lankan holiday, Ocean Wanderer has pulled up anchor and continues west through the Indian Ocean. This trip will be somewhat of a homecoming for Tony, as he lays in a course for his birthplace.
So we leave Sri Lanka, and then there's about a 10-day sail across to Africa.
The realities of sailing in this part of the world arise again.
We're getting into another area of the world, the Red Sea, that's notorious for piracy. So we're pretty apprehensive. We were approaching the Horn of Africa on our way to Djibouti. We were cutting between two islands to cut off about 200 miles on our passage. And suddenly we heard this chatter on Channel 16. In broken English, they mentioned the name Ocean Wanderer, and we thought, oh my God, we're really in for it now.
We just heard this voice swearing at us and definitely directed at us. They were calling us up on the radio, telling us that they were coming for us. So we just kept our course. We turned off our lights.
We see this boat in the distance, and we're just wondering what's going to happen.
It becomes a long night of cat and mouse.
We saw their lights. They came pretty close, but veered off and left. We don't know what they were all about, but it was pretty scary while it lasted.
The early morning sun brings with it sighs of relief, as their close encounter becomes now just an interesting anecdote for their ship's journal. Now, Ocean Wanderer is off to Africa, en route to the Red Sea.
A very emotional feeling came over me as I realized that in some funny way I was back home. It felt so good to feel Ocean Wanderer tugging on the anchor that was secured to Africa.
Their first African port of call is the East African city of Djibouti. Djibouti proves to be an entirely different and moving experience from the exotic ports they encountered in Indonesia.
Djibouti is just a very solid reminder of how tough things are in some parts of Africa.
What particularly got us about Djibouti was the poverty, the incredible poverty.
It made you realize how fortunate we were, how petty the things are that we do worry about when it's a matter of just basic survival.
And the things that we'd gone through, our hardships, really seemed almost trivial.
You have to stand back and say, wow, you know, what is important in life?
The kids really were affected by this.
It hit both of them. They were older now. And, you know, these kind of things suddenly were something they'd never seen in their lives before.
But once again, strange, they seemed to take it in their stride. We were happy to get out of there. Happy, but also we felt we were running away from stuff. And it made us realize how fortunate we are in so many ways. We just are lucky. We just happen to be born in the right place. Really, that's all it is.
Back on board Ocean Wanderer, the family is still captivated by their emotional experience in Djibouti.
We made a point of talking to the kids about it. We wanted them to appreciate what they had.
Ocean Wanderer continues northward to the mouth of the Red Sea. the coastline continues to be arid and barren all the way to their next port of call, Eritrea. Although scarred from over 30 years of conflict, the long struggle did win Eritrea their independence in 1993.
What a contrast. The country itself was war-torn and ravaged, but despite the ravaged state of the buildings, the hearts of the people were full of excitement and promise for the future.
They were ready to take on the challenge because they'd won their freedom and they were ready to start rebuilding their lives.
It was just a country that was so alive. The people there felt that they had their independence, they had something to strive for.
And one sensed a vibrancy in the atmosphere. They were enthusiastic about life.
People were excited, they were independent, they were starting their life afresh, they were building up what had been broken down.
Once again, Michael and Saskia become Ocean Wanderers ambassadors.
Kids playing on the street would want to interact with our kids, and that would happen, and the mom would come along. So she invited us into her home the next day for coffee.
She ground up some coffee beans, then roasted them and boiled them. And this process took a couple of hours.
But it was fascinating to hear this lady and the story of how life was turning around for them.
And it was just a very sobering experience to be in this home. This woman was just so happy and so enthusiastic.
Eritrea is another of those experiences that will touch the family for a lifetime and validates why they started this adventure in the first place. Eritrea has turned out to be an unexpected and enlightening experience. As Ocean Wanderer is about to depart, Saskia has an experience of her own.
If anybody's going to have an accident, it's Saskia.
Yes, Saskia was our clumsy one.
She's just such an enthusiastic, vibrant, bubbly type with, long legs and gangly in a way. And she's sitting on the boom of Ocean Wanderer in the port in Eritrea, and a boat goes by and Ocean Wanderer rocks slightly, and Sas literally fell off.
Down through the hatch into the main saloon onto a corner. So she'd split open her skull about 3 inches.
It bled profusely, and it looked a lot worse than it was.
Ariën's calmness and skill as a nurse looks after the wound. Saskia's accident is just another reminder that you have to keep your guard up when it comes to kids and life on board a sailboat, even when you're safely anchored.
Saskia, how are you feeling right now? A little bit better. That's good. The pills are taking effect, so we're just going to keep an eye on Saskia for the night, make sure that she stays okay.
With Saskia safe and recouping, Tony continues to push Ocean Wanderer northward into the raging Red Sea.
At that time of the year, the Red Sea was a slog.
Kids are starting to get seasick, as is Ariën.
I didn't feel great the whole time.
The Red Sea is punishing sailing. Tony decides to give Ocean Wanderer and her crew a break from slamming through the swells and heads into calmer waters.
And we're heading into the port of Suez in the Sudan. Now, we've been advised that this is really not a safe place to go to, but we thought, what the hell, let's check it out.
They again are amazed at the devastation and ruins found everywhere. But even in the midst of all this, they must clear customs.
Clearing customs is just part of something you have to do, and it can be quite tedious.
I'm used to customs officers, a lot of them that are not super friendly.
Very soon the kids would take over because often these people would relate to the kids and chat to them.
Well, this guy couldn't have been more friendly. We cleared customs. He was so excited to see us, and he in fact invited Ariën and I and the 2 kids to come around to his place for dinner that night.
So here we are at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're looking forward to the custom of drinking coffee in Sudan.
We were always open to those kind of things because you just have such wonderful experiences when you say yes.
Again, the Knights are overwhelmed by these people who have so little and openly give so much.
Waving goodbye to Babaka, the customs officer, and Howard.
After 2 days, they're back in the angry swells of the Red Sea, and the sailing is going to be demanded. The Knights and Ocean Wanderer continue to push north through the Red Sea. Tony pushes Ocean Wanderer hard into the night to try to get this part of the journey behind them.
We're smashing through those waves.
Having beaten into the wind for over 1,000 miles, Ocean Wanderer has finally conquered the Red Sea. The crew can now see the coastline. They've arrived in Egypt.
We secured Ocean Wanderer and then we headed inland, took one of the local buses into Cairo. We again spoilt ourselves. We stayed in a very lavish hotel. Got to see a couple of weddings taking place in the hotel.
The family stays true to their plan and try to experience all that the cradle of civilization has to offer.
Cairo was great. It was wonderful because just at that stage, Michael and Saskia were starting to do history about Egypt. So we were able to go to the markets, the bazaars, and experience a lot of basically Egyptian culture.
The Arabs say man fears time, yet time fears the pyramids. The Knights can't miss this opportunity to walk with the pharaohs.
Going to the pyramids, climbing right into the Pyramid of Cheops was a very special highlight.
And hot, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Their living history lesson of Egypt continues as Ocean Wanderer starts through the Suez Canal.
The Suez Canal has no locks in it. It's a 2-day passage, the same as the Panama Canal was, but this time we don't need any line handlers because we're not going to be tying up to any locks.
Ocean Wanderer achieves another milestone as she arrives in Port Said in the Mediterranean Sea. But even with the Red Sea behind them, this achievement is met with mixed emotions.
It was very much a bonding year for us. After our hassles in New Zealand, we were then able to just gel everything together and really feel at one with the ocean, with our life, with each other.
It was almost as if we were closing the chapter on that part of our life.
We'd become used to a different way and other ways, and I think moving into the Med was very much the fast food Western world.
Ocean Wanderer has passed through the doorway from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean.
We've particularly found the sailing to be rough and cold. It was the early part of the year, so we were still in the latter part of winter, and it wasn't that comfortable.
But absolutely freezing.
It's the roughest passage we ever had, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably our roughest ever. Leading into 30-knot winds with very rough seas. Hey,
And
let's do
then
it.
Papa gonna see us from this flag.
Isn't that exciting? How are you feeling about that?
Oh, I'm so happy. I'm so glad that they're coming.
Yeah, we're 23 miles away from Cache.
This part of the journey also brings new challenges to the crew. Deadlines, something they purposely avoided.
I think moving into the Med created a busyness. I knew that we had deadlines to meet.
We also had to meet up with my parents in Turkey. We had a deadline there. There they were waiting on the dock for us, and it turned out to be very, very positive.
Morning, Nanny and Papa.
Morning, morning, Daddy.
Welcome to Ocean Wanderer. Outfit that Nanny and Papa brought us. You look gorgeous, sus.
Thanks. And look at this, everybody. I'm gonna wear this to dinner.
Are we going out for dinner?
Turkey was a nice surprise. It still had a lot of that feeling of unspoiledness that we had experienced before. And that's why we like Turkey a lot.
The Mediterranean provides an added bonus to the crew: its historic past.
For the kids educationally, it was great. Doing the Greek gods just as we were in Greece was wonderful, and I think very much etched in the kids' minds.
Makes one quite thoughtful. The founder of medicine. Hippocrates used to be right here 2,000 years ago.
After a month exploring the wonders of the Greek islands, Ocean Wanderer pushes westward, with only brief stops as she's scheduled to meet up with Ariën's family in Holland in only 54 days.
Then a deadline of having to meet Ariën's dad in July at 2 o'clock in Holland.
I'm from Holland, so going to Holland was an important part of the trip for me.
When we got into the Med, we thought, oh darn it, we would like to spend more time here.
We really didn't do the Med justice, and I think if we were to go back there, we would feel quite differently about it.
True to his nature, Tony makes sure they meet the deadline.
This is the day, the 20th of July.
We put all our flags up of all the countries that we visited, and
we had those strapped from the mast going up the forestay and then down the backstay.
My goal was to arrive and come out of the fog at 2 o'clock, and we did it. And we arrived at the North Sea Canal, and we saw the family all standing there up on the dock. And the moment they saw us with all the flags, the excitement was unbelievable. And it was also exciting because I knew that we had 3 months in Holland to be with the family, No navigation to worry about. Obviously boat maintenance is an ongoing thing, but I'm better at it. I'm dealing with that better, and Ariën and I are working much better as a team.
The Kingdom of the Netherlands will provide the crew 3 months of rest and relaxation with family and friends before their next adventure, crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Ocean Wanderer and her crew have spent 2 wonderful months in the Netherlands, relaxing and vacationing with Ariën's family. Although it's getting late in the sailing season, they're having a hard time pulling themselves away.
Ideally, we should have left at the beginning of September, but we were having a lot of fun, and the weather was still good, and there was sort of family gatherings, and we had to do this and do that. So it was basically the end of September.
It was time to push Ocean Wanderer and get down to Falmouth. And Falmouth would be our last port of call, but before leaving Europe, so to speak, leaving the British Isles for sure, and making our way across the Bay of Biscay down to the Canaries.
As Ocean Wanderer heads out from Falmouth, there's concern about the fickle North Atlantic weather at this time of year.
So we knew that it wasn't an ideal time, but we also knew that the hops were short enough for us to be able to hopefully pick our weather so that we didn't have too bad a time.
We're heading south towards Spain, and we're making fantastic headway. And she's slicing through the water beautifully, a lovely motion, and I'm thinking, well, I wonder how long this can last.
It was going to be a three-day crossing pretty well for us to get down to Spain. And the first 2 days were terrific. But by the 3rd day, we got ourselves in an almighty gale and storm. So all hell broke loose.
And we got wind coming out of the south, roaring in at about 40-45 knots. The sea suddenly changed from this beautiful, peaceful ocean to something quite miserable, almost like being in a washing machine. Kids start to get seasick. Mike is sick 11 times, I believe, that particular Sunday morning.
Mike was awfully seasick, and I was, and it just was bedlam. I mean, the boat was all over the place.
Tony maneuvers Ocean Wanderer out of the turbulent waters of the Bay of Biscay towards the northern tip of Spain.
We made a landfall at about midnight, and it was just fantastic. I mean, the whole motion on Ocean Wanderer totally changed. Kids woke up, spirits were elevated once again, and we made our way through this little channel to this beautifully sheltered bay in a port in Spain.
That was wonderful, because once we got ourselves into shelter in a bay, everything just looks normal again.
Well, we made it. Now we have sunny skies, tranquil waters, and we're feeling well rested, and we're about to head into town. Well, Mick's really found something to play soccer with.
Rio da Sideria provides an unexpected and unplanned respite that everyone is more than happy to take in after their encounter with the Atlantic and the Bay of Biscay.
Okay, we're popping ourselves into forward gear. And so we bid farewell to Rio da Sideria.
The Knights will take 10 leisurely days to hopscotch their way around the northern tip of Spain and down the coast to Portugal.
We love Portugal. We did some wonderful inland trips where we just met some people who took us inland on this fabulous hike to this little town or little village, and it was just terrific.
The Knights and Ocean Wanderer have conquered the Bay of Biscay and explored the wonders of Spain and Portugal. Now they're primed and ready for their next exotic location.
We can see land, and once again it's Africa and the country of Morocco. What an exciting time. We're back into Africa, third world country again.
We tied up at a cute little port and then headed inland, taking the Marrakesh Express all the way into Marrakesh.
Founded in roughly 1070, the Moroccan city of Marrakesh is pure enchantment.
Morocco was exotic again, and that's what we liked about it. We loved the bazaar, the markets, just generally the hubbub of the life there was very exciting.
Really exciting city.
We went to a show one evening and got to meet the local people. Wined and dined in great style.
The kids loved the atmosphere and enjoyed just cruising around the town.
We decided to go to Casablanca, and we took the kids to the bar and had a drink there with them because Saskia by this time had got interested in movies, and one of her favorite movies was Casablanca, so she had this wild idea that it was going to be just like the movie. Yeah, we just enjoyed Morocco and Marrakesh particularly a lot.
It's time to say goodbye to the Casbah and make their way to their final port before they attempt their last ocean crossing.
And then from Morocco, we headed on to the Canary Islands. And the Canaries would be our final stop before the big North Atlantic Passage.
Although she left late in the season from Holland, Ocean Wanderer has made up for lost time, and they're back on their timetable.
This is the right time of the year to do it. So we're back on track, so to speak, as far as being in the right part of the world at the right time of the world.
Ocean Wanderer is enjoying a wonderful, relaxed sail from Morocco en route to the Canary Islands.
Beautiful sail. I remember that being a particularly gorgeous sail. I mean, we had great weather, we had wonderful winds, and it was just a lot of fun. Everybody we had a wonderful time in Morocco, and we're just excited about heading off to the next spot.
And in Pasito Blanco on Gran Canaria, we hauled Ocean Wanderer out of the water and gave her hull a final clean, a coat of paint, and got her all checked over for the big passage across the North Atlantic.
The family plans to have 10 days in the Canary Islands to ready Ocean Wanderer for her passage and take in some final R&R before they tackle the Atlantic.
We plan to set sail in early January from Pasito Blanco in the Canaries to the Caribbean.
Ocean Wanderer is now ready, and she's provisioned for their 19-day voyage.
Princess doing a great job of getting all the stuff on board.
It's also here in the Canary Islands that they'll pick up a new crew member.
Ariën's cousin Rake had joined us, and that was comforting because I had another male on board to help with sail handling. We knew that our watches at night wouldn't be as strenuous. We had somebody also to help us with the schooling of the kids. So, I mean, it couldn't have been better.
Well, there's Mick. He's casting off.
Our trip across the North Atlantic, I am expecting to be a lot of fun. I'm expecting it to be lady sailing, as a phrase that was termed by my father. In other words, good trade wind sailing, the boat's moving along comfortably, we're in the tropic, it's warm, we've got steady winds, comfortable motion on the boat, but then I start to get this feeling. It's a weird feeling that came over me. We're in the Canaries and I start to wonder about whether we're going to make this passage.
This was the culmination of our circumnavigation. This would be the very last ocean that we would cross. Would we be able to make this ocean? Would we be able to reach the finishing line?
It will be a 19-day, 2,700-mile passage from the Canaries to St. Lucia. And the crew will have to deal with everything Mother Nature and the North Atlantic can throw at them.
Squall after squall, and yes, we did have all kinds of systems thrown at us, and at one stage Tony was on the radio to one of the weather guys saying that it had all the characteristics of a hurricane, but it was the wrong time of the year, so we felt pretty apprehensive.
Although Ocean Wanderer is making good time, the erratic weather is a constant worry to her captain.
And at about midnight or just after, a huge squall came through.
It caused all sorts of chaos on deck. The net result was that we ended up snapping our spinnaker pole in half.
Now Tony and Rake have to tackle the job of trying to repair the snapped spinnaker pole in the middle of the Atlantic swells.
The Rake's got the other end here. And we've got a new spinnaker pole. It's got a little bit of a twist in it.
Tony and Rake barely have time to enjoy their resourcefulness and successful repair job on the spinnaker when the Atlantic throws them another curve.
We've got a very strong following sea that is sort of slopping up against the stern of Ocean Wanderer. And I guess we had one too many slops, because when I came to start the engine to charge the batteries, the engine would not start. And that is such a sickening feeling. When you turn that ignition key and clunk, nothing happens.
They worked on it. They really tried, he always fixed everything. There was never a problem, and this time he couldn't fix it.
So we had to admit defeat, shut down the engine, and realize that this is a sailboat, and let's sail it. And once again, Ariën was fantastic. She said, come on, Tony, Ocean Wanderer is a 52-foot sailboat with a wonderful cutter rig. She's a good seaboat. Let's just sail her. And we've always done that. But for some reason, knowing that you don't have that backup worried the heck out of me.
And I think that particularly made Tony quite apprehensive. I mean, he'd been so calm all along, and now all of a sudden he felt that too much had gone wrong.
We've achieved so much. I mean, it's basically 4 years. I've got the family sort of 3/4 of the way around the world, and are we going to make this final leg? And I had this premonition that something was going to happen to us on this leg, and that I wasn't going to get Ocean Wanderer and the family safely across to the Caribbean. And it was a nagging feeling that I had the whole way across the Atlantic. I could not get rid of it. I'm lying in my bed and I just can't sleep. I broke into sweats. I just had to pull myself together and say, Tony, you've got to, behave normally and snap out of it.
He really thought the boat was just going to pack up, that everything he'd done for the 5 years on her was suddenly going to cease, or I don't know, he just felt that we weren't going to make it. I felt I was spending a lot of time trying to tell him that it was going to be okay, and that really we weren't going to sink, or something wasn't going to happen to the boat, and that we would get to our destination. So I think I started talking a lot to Tony about, that things were going to be okay.
Of course, that helped me a lot, because she can reason with me and say, Tony, look, you've been sailing for 20 odd years, snap out of it, we're going to be fine. I mean, we're doing everything right. We've got a safe boat, we're with other boats around the place, we've got an extra crew member, there's nothing to worry about.
Ariën takes control, calming Tony and making sure the rest of the crew's routine remains unaffected.
So I think they were totally unaware that there was sort of turmoil going on in our minds.
It's now been 19 days on the open water. The crew of Ocean Wanderer has endured all the Atlantic has thrown at them, and they now see the finish line, St. Lucia.
There's land. Yes!
But then, in an instant, the thrill of spotting land is forgotten.
Well, the ratchet's going. We've got a fish on board. Grab it, Mick.
Mike comes racing up on deck and grabs this little fishing rod.
It has taken nearly 5 years, but finally, Michael Knight has caught his prize, a trophy-sized marlin.
We brought it right up alongside, we took a photograph.
And the excitement on his face, he was just ecstatic.
You could see the hook was very loose, so we were going to have trouble getting it on board. And then I said to Mike, we got to let it go. And he said, okay. So we let it go, and Mike still, to this day, is not happy about that decision.
With St. Lucia on the horizon, the realization that their amazing adventure is coming to an end starts to hit home.
We all felt the emotion of knowing that this was the end of our trip. We all realized the impact of that moment. It meant so much to us.
They have given themselves 3 months to make their way to Fort Lauderdale, where their adventure had begun.
The whole idea was that we were going to swim, we were going to snorkel, catch fish, enjoy a holiday, because we had now crossed our line. We were back where we had started off.
We knew that we weren't going to be crossing any oceans anymore. And it was sad.
As the family slowly makes their way through the Caribbean northwards towards Florida, they cherish every last precious moment of their amazing around-the-world adventure. The Knights have done it. They've completed their family dream of circumnavigating the globe. But the satisfaction of this amazing feat brings with it some unexpected emotions.
This is it. I mean, literally, we are right back to square one where we started. Fort Lauderdale, 5 years almost to the day. We've been around the world, 50 countries, 35,000 miles. And we're going to be leaving her.
We hadn't anticipated how we would feel saying goodbye to the boat.
We felt as if we were deserting her.
She had taken on so much more than just a boat to us. I mean, she was Ocean Wanderer. We had the memories, but this was the physical goodbye of this life. It's as if the whole 5 years come flashing by.
Ocean Wanderer's mission was to allow 4 people to spend 365 days of the year together as a family, doing things that they love to do in a safe environment and having fun.
We wanted a place that was home. We wanted a place where we could always come back to, where the food would be the same, where the toys would be the same, the pillow would be the same. So even though we were traveling for 5 years, we still had that base that was home. And that's what Ocean Wanderer was for us.
But now it's time for them to say goodbye to their home, their sanctuary, and their friend.
And I remember Ariën and I standing at the helm, just holding that wheel. I mean, we'd held it for 5 years, steering Ocean Wanderer. And we'd been through a lot.
What we hadn't expected was Mike's reaction.
Mike had this jelly bean. I guess he had a bag of jelly beans in his pocket, and he just left one on the deck as a parting gift for Ocean Wanderer. And that did it. I mean, I think Ariën and I just broke up, and so did Mike. Saskia, on the other hand, terribly excited about the next phase and ready to move on.
With their goodbyes said and their boat sold, it's time for the Knights to head back to Calgary. The kids will head back to a real school, and all will have to get used to schedules and a different reality.
Can you see the house?
That's the house!
There's the house. Oh no, there's a flag.
Goodness.
After 5 years of being on their own, the Knights relish being back surrounded with family and friends. But it's also a time of reflection for Tony and Ariën. Had they achieved what they'd set out to do 5 years earlier?
What I really wanted the kids to gain from a trip like this is just to know how diverse and how different people are and how different people live, and just to accept them all and understand that there are so many differences in our lives. And I think I achieved that with the kids.
Being with their children 24/7 for 5 years has given Tony and Ariën a rare opportunity to really get to know their kids.
Michael is a quiet person. When he was young, we used to tease that he boarded with us because he was very independent. I mean, he was the one who was off fishing or sailing.
Mike's definitely an individual, and he's dogged, determined, whatever he sets out to do. He'd rather have his cornflakes on Ocean Wanderer than go out and eat some exotic meal. And he wasn't the big socialite. He wasn't the big chatter that wanted to meet other people.
I know that it gave Mike a stability. He knows exactly what he wants to do. He knows exactly where he belongs. And when I see Mike now, he has a very quiet confidence about him. He is very determined.
That determination has taken Michael Knight from a sea of blue to a sea of green.
My dad introduced me to the game of golf. I just realized that you start hitting some good shots and you're like, this is fun, I want to do this more often and as much as possible. And I just started playing a lot, and then I wanted to be the club champ, and then everything just kind of escalated from there.
I know he uses the trip or the sailing very, very positively in his life.
The experiences that I had on the boat were priceless.
It's made him feel that he can achieve things and do things that he never thought he could do.
It made me a little bit more independent, wanting to do things on my own, and because I saw my parents were like, they had the ultimate freedom, they could do anything they wanted to. The whole trip in itself definitely taught me just to accept people for who they are. You couldn't have brought me up any better because it just taught us so much. Just being able to say that I sailed around the world is pretty awesome.
Memories that now seem like they were a lifetime ago come flooding back with just a sound.
Hearing flags like that and then something clanging as if the ropes on the mast just hitting from the wind or something like that. Just little things like that kind of trigger in my mind.
Michael Knight has relinquished his huck fin life, traded his fishing pole for golf clubs, and has secured a college golf scholarship. But Ocean Wanderer is indelibly etched forever on Michael Knight. As for his sister Saskia, she has chosen a different path.
She's just such an enthusiastic, vibrant, bubbly type with, long legs and gangly in a way.
Saskia particularly benefited a lot from the experiences because she would get totally involved right away.
Saskia just blossomed with this experience.
Lapped up everything.
She just had this wide open heart that just was there to suck up anything that came her way. And it just allowed her to grow. It gave her like a free rein to take on the world and just to grow as much as she could.
And she still has a lot of that same exuberance about her.
Saskia has chosen to relive her youth and go back to where Ocean Wanderer led her some 12 years earlier.
This is a dream, like getting to go back to where I was brought up, things like that. It's amazing. And I chose to go on the Concordia this semester and next semester especially because when we sailed the South Pacific, that was the first leg we went on Ocean Wanderer, and I was about 4 years old, so I don't remember it very well. And I wanted to relive that. That's part of why I've come to Class Afloat, because we only do school while you're at sea when you're on land, just like we did on Ocean Wanderer. You go do field trips and go for hikes and stand on volcanoes and meet the King of Tonga and things like that. So it's a lot going back to my childhood, which I really like.
Instilled in her by 2 generations, Saskia sees her path very clearly.
If you want to do something, you know what, do it, give it 110, you know, go big or go home. My parents really taught me that, because ever since they had this dream, we're going to sail around the world, pick everything up, take our kids, do it. Everyone that we talk to, no, you can't do that. Are you serious? Like, you can't take 2 little kids and sail around the world. That really taught me that if you want to do something, believe in yourself and you can do it.
Definitely, there is a lack of fear.
Her life is very much on track. She's a confident young girl. She's ready to take on the world again, so to speak.
You have to get out of what you know as your comfort zone, what you are comfortable with, and really expand yourself, because you'll become such a better person.
As Saskia sets off to follow her next dream, it's time again for yet another bittersweet goodbye.
I'm so excited to go on the Concordia to really discover myself and the people around me and see if I can learn from myself and them and everybody I meet, things like that, and see what I want to do.
Once again, the South Pacific beckons. And once again, Saskia Knight will answer her call. With their children well on their way, Tony and Ariën reflect on their adventure.
You don't just do something like that for 5 years and then forget about it. The whole experience and everything that Ocean Wanderer embodied is still with us.
It was a success story personified. We achieved what we had set out to do, and our family has been changed forever. I don't think many days go by when I don't, in some way, either directly or indirectly, think about what we've done. Seeing a full moon, I'm right back on Ocean Wanderer. When there's a storm, there's lightning and thunder, I think back to Ocean Wanderer. I just love life so much more now, and I'm sure our life experience on Ocean Wanderer has been a big contributing factor to that.
The whole trip wasn't about where we went, it was about the people. I mean, time and time again, when we were traveling, the generosity, particularly of those people who were much less fortunate than us in a lot of the third world countries or in the Far East, was amazing. And that's what would bowl us over more than anything, is how they had nothing and all they wanted to do was share what they had with us. It had nothing to do with the trip. It's the people that made the trip, the people that we met and the things that we experienced with people all around the world.
People say, well, how could you do this? How could you give up everything and just go and take your family? And actually, as I reflect back on it, I realize that it wasn't that difficult. You take it one step at a time, baby steps. We met people from all walks of life, totally different personalities. And for many different reasons, people were out there.
I think it's a dream that makes people make that decision.
Where are we going? Around them? We're going around the world.
I often say to people, you can certainly do something like that. Maybe not exactly the same, but maybe a motorhome through the States for a year with your family. I mean, there's different ways of doing it or different types of things, but if you want it, there's a way. There is a way that you can do it.
When you get across an ocean to another land, which you have to raise a foreign flag, and a new language, new food, and you realize, wow, I got here all on my own. The sense of achievement is magnificent. I mean, it's unbelievable.
And what does the future hold for the intrepid crew of Ocean Wanderer?
I see us on a boat again. I see Ariën and I for sure on a boat, and hopefully the kids will come and join us, and I have no doubt that they will do the Caribbean or Scandinavia or something like that. When I look back on it, it's given me this wonderful power that makes me realize that I can do anything I want to do, and that anybody can. If they set their mind to it, they can do anything. And that's such a wonderful gift to have been given.
The Knight family took hold of their dream and made it happen, and inspire us all to take time to dream, what if?
You know, I think we all have dreams, and it's just a matter of when we're going to try and make these dreams become a reality.